Let's get to the next one here. This one comes in from Dave. He's got a 14-team super flex, 2 flexes. I have Lamar Jackson, Emeka Egbuka, Rome Odunze, and Oronde Gadsden. All likely belong in the coping corner. They have been destroying, all caps destroying, so he means it, destroying my team in the last month or so. I just traded Quinshon Judkins, Caleb T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, and Addison for Gibbs. Okay, anyways, we'll whatever. Point is, did not happen here for these players. We're going to focus on Emeka Egbuka and Rome Odunze here. We're going to actually get to Oronde Gadsden in just a second. We obviously just addressed Lamar Jackson. So Emeka Egbuka, Rome Odunze, let's group these two guys together, Boone. Where are each of them going to be for you? Let's start with Emeka Egbuka.
Emeka Egbuka, I'll just tell you right now, both these guys are going to the coping corner for me. And I think you're going to push back on this one. I think that's why you've grouped them together here. And that's okay. I'm willing to listen to that because we both really like these guys. And I think we both have a ton of them on our fantasy teams because we talked a lot about them before the season. We were drafting them pretty frequently, I think. But let's start. I mean, for Egbuka, like we've talked about this. I brought up that stat a few weeks ago and that stat just keeps growing where he only has one game where he's had double-digit fantasy points in the last 7 now, right? We started talking about that when it was like 4 or 5. Now we're up to 6 of 7. It's been bad. And it's been particularly bad when you look at what he did early in the season when we thought we were geniuses. And I still think this guy is going to be a great player. I think he is a really good pro. But what we saw early in the season when through the first 5 weeks, he was the 3rd highest scoring fantasy receiver on a per game basis. Like he was outstanding. It looked like we were potentially going to have an immediate superstar. And now since then, since week 6, wide receiver 45 per game. Like it is just such a stark difference. And again, this is another situation where I do think the injury kind of happened in there and that really seemed to change his season. I don't know if that's the only reason, but I think that definitely factored in. We also saw this offense just deal with a ton of injuries, not just at the skill positions, Chris Godwin missing time, Mike Evans missing time. The line has just been kind of this rotation of guys that have been getting hurt and coming back all year long. So that's a problem. But I look at this and he's another one where it's like hard to have real faith in putting him in your lineup in these weeks that matter the most, right? In these weeks that are so important. He's killing fantasy lineups right now. Outside of that one good game that he had like over the last 2 months here. He gets the Saints this week. He went 3 for 35 against them when they played in week 8. So it's another thing to be worried about. Chris Godwin, I thought, looked a little more like himself. If we're talking about guys that are potentially getting healthier, who dealt with injuries, I thought he looked better in this game too. So what does that do for potentially taking away some targets from Emeka Egbuka? Mike Evans might practice this week. He's probably going to come back soon. Does that make this whole offense better and we see some better performances from Egbuka? Or is this a situation where we see some guys come back that might have fresher legs because they've been sitting out and they could be better down the stretch and Egbuka could take a bit of a back seat? I just don't know what exactly is going to change for him that all of a sudden he's going to go back to scoring at a clip that we feel better about. Do you want to talk about him specifically or do you want me to go on to Odunze?
No, rip on Rome real quick and then we'll put, because I do think we'll group them together in terms of the response here.
Yeah, I'm worried because I feel like you've been working on this one all day. You got something big prepared for me here. But Odunze, another guy,
I swear.
I do really like Odunze. And I said I will listen to an argument on this one because he has been producing, right? It's not like he's been having these absolute terrible games. He has been producing, right? 4 of his last 5 games before this week, they weren't bad performances. And then you look at this week against the Eagles, you knew that was going to be a bit tougher, right? So that I can give him a bit of a pass. And yet we know the production has been pretty boomer bust with him, right? He's had kind of decent production, but he hasn't been having as many of those big games as he did earlier in the season. And then you look ahead to the schedule here, Packers, Browns, Packers, the next 3 weeks. I think that's problematic. I think they have a lot of guys on this offense that are willing to spread the ball around too. It's coping corner in my mind for this guy as well. Even though these are 2 players that we were extremely high on before the season, I think we have to change the outlook here because I don't see this like rocky road that these 2 receivers have been on recently. I don't see it smoothing out. I don't know what exactly is going to change for them where all of a sudden we're going to start getting these top 15, even top 20 performances from them more consistently like we were earlier in the year.
I wanted to put these guys together because I think they are very similar in the way that not just like they are guys we liked in the offseason, and they were guys that got off to these fantastic starts this year where they looked like the right picks in the first 5 to 6 weeks of the season. These were the best, like two of the best producing wide receivers in fantasy, which one I think probably altered expectations of what these guys were going to be the rest of the season. You know, I thank God don't do rest of season rankings anymore. I know you do rest of season rankings, and this is why I hated doing them. It's because like you can overreact and it's like, okay, well this guy is a right answer. He's a wide receiver 1 rest of season. The reality is that these guys, at least for me in my rankings, were around like wide receiver 30. And I kind of think that they're going to end up finishing maybe a little bit better, but probably right around there to sort of what we expected them to be this season, which is volatile wide receiver 2-3 types. And to me, I don't think it's instructive about the like, hey, this happened at the beginning of the season. Those games still counted. Those games still mattered, right? And just because it hasn't happened lately doesn't mean it will never happen again. And to me, Boone, the thing that one of the reasons I can't put either of these guys in the coping corner, look, like you made a really good argument there. We'll come to a consensus on this, but the thing that gives me the biggest pause is this feels so much like when we put Tetero McMillan in the coping corner and immediately, literally regretted it the week after, where Tetero McMillan in the first whatever games it was, first 10 weeks of the season, was averaging 7.4 points per game. He had 7 of his last 8 games were single-digit fantasy performances. Again, some of the same stuff we could talk about with Odunze and Emeka Egbuka. And then he comes out and he has his best game of the season against the Falcons, has kind of a 9.5 game the week after in week 12, and then around 10.3 points this past week. And to me, just like anytime there's a young wide receiver who has kind of shaky quarterback play, which is definitely true in Chicago. And I think Baker's been shaky so far this year and also is contributing to the problem a little bit with some like mistakes and drops, which is definitely true of Odunze, definitely true of Egbuka. And it was true of McMillan as well at times this year. Like those are things that just even out over the course of a season for a really good young ascending wide receiver. And I totally hear you that I'm saying this, and I have no idea if this is about to happen next week. I don't know if it's going to happen for Odunze in some of these tough matchups or anything like that, but I will be stunned if we don't get like 2 or 3 more good games from both of these wide receivers the rest of the way, because to me, like in good conscience, if it's especially after making the mistake with McMillan, and maybe I'm overcorrecting for that. If it's a good young wide receiver who is the clear lead target getter in his offense, which is true for both of these guys, even as other players have emerged in Chicago, it's still been Rome Odunze as the lead target player over the course of the season. And obviously Colson Loveland is a baller. Obviously, Luther Burden is very good as well, but still like targets per route, very similar. To me, I just think that we're not going to see these guys stay down the rest of the season, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I truly am coping here and I should be in the coping corner with these two players. But to me, it feels very similar to the Tetero McMillan situation, which we regretted right away.
I think in my mind, at least, the difference with the Tetero McMillan situation was something did change there, right? Like they straight up said they decided to use him differently. They started moving him around more. That was kind of the big thing that I feel like unlocked that game that we got from him where we took him out, and now potentially is helping this passing attack in Carolina be better the rest of the season. And I think that's a credit to the coaching, right? Like Dave Canales does a good job there. I don't know. For me, like this comes down to like, I don't dislike these two. In fact, I really, really like these two players, and I think they're going to have great careers. And I just look at it like from a real life standpoint, talent wise, I absolutely think these guys are great. I'm looking at it from a fantasy perspective and going, okay, we now have 7 weeks of Egbuka disappointing 6 out of those 7 and just not being the same player. And now we keep kind of pushing him down to where's he going to be this week? Like it's hard to move him outside of like the top 24, but he ends up kind of going down into that range. He becomes this more risky play. And each week you kind of hope like the Lamar Jackson thing that, okay, this is going to be the week when he gets it right. He gets it going. And that hasn't happened now. And we're going on, week 8 potentially of that. So him, I'm very worried about this season, not career-wise, not worried career-wise about either of these guys.
Yeah.
Odunze is the one that, like I said, I think I would listen to a total panic and not coping corner a little bit more for him. just because he's kind of continued to produce through this, hasn't had as many good games, but has continued to have better stats than Egbuka over this last stretch. So for him, I do feel, and I don't know, I want to say that I have a little more faith in the Bears offense as well, even though I think that schedule is going to be pretty tough. But have faith in Ben Johnson, and they have the rushing attack going there. But I don't know, man. Overall, I think these two guys, what it comes down to for me is putting them in your lineup does not feel good. And making that decision every week the rest of the way, especially when we get to the fantasy playoffs, is going to be very, very difficult. And I'm not looking forward to having that, that time to figure that out in my rankings and where we're going to put them. And people are going to be depending on that. So that is a real concern the rest of the season for two players that at the beginning of the year were just automatic, set it and forget it. These guys are going to win our leagues. And yes, they're not performing at that level. They might be a little closer to where we drafted them. Overall in the season, they're definitely values. No regrets on taking them, but I don't see the thing that's going to change like it changed with McMillan, where all of a sudden things are going to turn in a positive direction and we're going to see more consistent production from them.
We didn't see it coming with McMillan either, though. That's the thing. Like, things change quickly, and it just happens. So,
where we landing here?
I don't know. I can't do it. I can't do it.
All right.
I'm going to hold out the faith here on these two guys.
We have to agree. So we hold them out. So. Yeah. Let's do it.
There'll be interesting discussions when we do. So total panic for sure. I mean, obviously, I'm not looking forward to having and like the two teams that I've got Odunze on that are really good. I'm going to start him, and I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to feel good about it, but I do think I'm going to continue to do it. I actually do think that after talking to you, I'm a little more worried about Egbuka just for the rest of the season. I think both these guys are players that I'm going to really be targeting next draft season for sure. Yep. Dynasty leagues for sure. No panic on those guys in that sense, but just with like some of the players coming back. But man, at the same time, like the players coming back for the Bucs, I think can actually benefit Egbuka at some point just because it'll take some defensive attention away. I mean, that will definitely help for both of these guys. But yeah, right now, I think we're just sort of course correcting to great start to the season, to rough middle of the season. And I'm going to be willing to hold out hope here that we get a good end of season for both of these guys. I mean, shoot, again, with Odunze, with all the wind and like they're running the ball, Caleb Williams completing sub 50% of his passes in that game, I think we could be having, I mean, again, if he catches, if he gets that touchdown pass, we're probably not having this conversation about him. It's just the margin for error for this stuff is so narrow. Ultimately, I feel like the coping corner at wide receiver is made for players like Calvin Ridley and like Brian Thomas Jr. that have basically given you nothing all year. Matthew Golden, Xavier Worthy. I don't know. These guys, to me, too good to belong in the coping corner, and that's just what I feel about it.
It does feel harsh. I will say, though, listening to Matt Harmon when it comes to receivers, that is going to put you in a good position normally for fantasy. So I will listen to you here. We will keep them out of the coping corner, and we will hope that we see that turnaround like we saw with McMillan.